Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about my Frostbolt Comet Infernalist. I kind of want to talk about why I chose this Ascendancy, why Demon Form, and why I think this is a really nice and neat package that often is underrated versus some of the other classes. So first, this build revolves around Frostbolt with the Snake Pit Ring. The Snake Pit makes it so Frostbolt cannot pierce, and therefore it will explode on the first target hit. Once it collides, you get both the initial projectile damage as well as the AoE damage both at the same time, which is round about 4 to 5 times the damage of one spark. You then also fork from Snake Pit, which gives you on average 2.75 projectiles with the Split Shot Anoint, which helps you quite a bit for clear. Now in terms of our main damage dealer, that is going to be Comet through Cast on Elemental Ailment. Not only are we going to freeze a lot with the Frostbolt, we also have the Infernalist Ascendancy Bringer of Flame, which gives us all damage, also contributes to Flammability and Ignite, which lets you get a lot more procs and means that even during clearing, you're going to have some more consistent meteors. We then have the Demon Form, which gives us 30% more damage, 25% increased attack speed, and also makes us faster just for one Ascendancy. We have Pyromantic Pact, which removes all the necessity for mana recovery whatsoever, and also means that we self-damage ourselves, so we can use Recoup with Sacrosanctum, a body armor that makes your Recoup apply to both life and energy shield. And even though this body armor starts with very low energy shield, we still get over 8,000, and then with the Recoup we also have extremely good recovery, which is usually one of the issues with energy shield. Whenever fighting a boss, we plop down Frostbolts to absolutely annihilate it. Once it comes up and you proc the Frostbolts on top of it, it will not only explode the Frostbolts, which does a lot of damage, it will also let the projectiles of the Frostbolts shotgun and fork out, so it's kind of a shit show. Now, I know that meteor builds are dime a dozen out there right now, and I kind of want to talk about what the upsides and downsides is. If you're like wondering, oh, should I go this or Stormweaver or maybe Blood Mage, they're all good. All of them work. Meteor builds are insane right now, and that is because of how meta skills work. Meta skills are incredibly effective on bosses, which is where you need the damage. If you don't know, these meta skills work off of power, which means that against normal monsters, you get a 1 multiplier, on magic 2, on rare 5, and on bosses 20 in terms of how much it procs. So that is why you see all these compilations of crazy amounts of meteors falling down on bosses. This is why you see these kind of casters not be played on the first 2-3 days, because they need to ramp up, but then at some point they just go completely haywire and it becomes a great archetype. So I will just talk about the upsides of this particular version. So the first one is speed. For me, the only problem with casters that I have is the movement speed. Coming from crossbows and bows, it is kind of hard to play sometimes. If you look at this movement speed, I currently have, I'm not even sure, I think 37% movement speed. But look at what happens if I go into Demon Form, right? Demon Form has a dodge that is round about 1.5 times faster than a normal dodge. And it does scale with extra movement speed as well. So you will be round about even a little bit faster than normal sprint would be. So it's around about a 50 to 60% more multiplier. The second is insane out of combat recovery. So we'll talk about this a little bit more once I talk about Infernalist. But if you look at my energy shield right now, you have to ramp it up a little bit. I have Infernal Flame on the right side, which is basically my mana. So it takes my mana, doubles it, and that is now my Infernal Flame. And whenever I'm on full Infernal Flame, I take some damage, but with Recoup, that is actually an upside. And all this amount of Recoup also means that you can sometimes just stand in the middle of stuff. I'm sure you've seen compilations where people just stand in the middle of a Simulacrum. And then this build is pretty cheap comparatively. There's no Temporalis here. Believe it or not, the +4 skills helmet that you see on every single caster out there is like over 200 divines. I'm not gonna say that this build is cheap depending on what you're used to. I still paid over like 100 divines or so to put this together, between 100 and 300, whatever the current going rate is. But this is nowhere near in like absolute delusional land. So even if you're starting a little bit later, this is achievable. However, I would not recommend this as a starter build since you still need your Recoup rolls to get this going. So it's kind of like an in-between. There's a few downsides though. The first one is you can't run Headhunter, and I have honestly no idea why that is. I looked at all the rare modifiers, but there seems to be one where my life Recoup only turns off. I have no idea why. And then it takes me out of Demon Form. You don't ever die, by the way. Like, you can never die off of Demon Form. So let's say I forget that I'm playing the game, right? And I never get Recoup. So just so you know, 1 tick of Recoup already sustains your Demon Form forever. But as you can see, even whenever you trickle down in maps, it doesn't matter. You always go back up and it just takes you out of the form. But I don't know what happened with Headhunter. I still cannot tell why. So if that's a thing that you need to run Headhunter, then that's a downside. You can't really run less recovery maps because of how Sacrosanctum and the Recoup is set up, it is an incredibly annoying stat, and also you will probably get increased effect from your Atlas tree anyway, so it's going to be even worse. And also there is less potential damage. Now, I've had this discussion on the stream before, and I'm not really sure how to engage with this, because this build, like you saw in the intro, kills Possession in like 3 to 4 seconds, depending on how you place your Frost Walls. And I've done bosses with around about 20 million HP on at the end of a Delhi map with like damage reduction and everything, really hard mods, and it takes me around about 4 to 5 seconds. I'm not really sure if you need more damage than this. Maybe you found some glitch in this game. Maybe you're carrying 6-man parties. If I personally get upgrades in this build, let's for example say I upgrade my wand, the first thing I would do is cut all my damage nodes and just get more energy shield. That's my personal opinion. I don't know where people take these numbers from that they need it. I guess it looks better on YouTube. I can understand. So if that is something you need as well, then you should probably go for a Blood Mage. Blood Mage has the highest damage output potential. But let's go over this Ascendancy first. You have the Demon Form right here, and you can see that you get increased attack speed while in Demon Form, 3% more damage per Demon Flame. Now, your maximum is 10. That is the natural maximum of Demon Form right here. And you can make it infinite if you want to, but that is very stressful to play and very stressful to keep up. I personally do not think it's worth it. So yeah, this is one of the best Ascendancies in the game, straight up. It is ridiculous. 30% more damage, 25 cast speed. And okay, you have this little bit of a degen, which you can work around very easily. If you look right here, you will see the degen build up, and I can show you right here, a single Recoup proc will completely sustain all of this degen. So you can see right here, I take a little bit of self damage and it's done, right? Like that's literally what happens, and that holds out for 6 seconds, and then you start degenning again. So while you're in a map, when you're casting, it's impossible not to keep up. And yes, Demon Form has this really fast dodge that makes mapping a lot more enjoyable. Now you could say, well, you could also just sprint and you would be maybe a little bit slower, but not a lot. That is true, but sprint also can get you heavy, like, knockdown, right, at everything. So it's also a little bit more annoying. So for example, I can sprint here as well if I want to in Demon Form, right? But usually I will just kind of play like this, and it is very, very, very smooth in between packs especially. Now, then let's go over Pyromantic Pact and a Recoup setup. So Pyromantic Pact makes it so that your mana gets doubled but converted to Infernal Flame. So I can show you this right now. If I refund this passive, you can see I have 604 mana. That gets converted to 1,208 Infernal Flame. And this is now your new resource. And it still works with stuff like increased mana cost and whatnot, so it's still technically mana, so it's a little bit weird. But all it really means is once this is full, you take some damage, right? As you can see right here. Which, if you have self-damage, that means you can now make use of life recoup even while out of combat without something actually hitting you. However, this has a little bit of a ramp-up time. As you can see, the first proc is pretty bad, the second one, the third one, right? You also have your flask if you activate your flask, and in around about 2 seconds later, you're gonna have crazy recovery. You can see right now, I'm immediately topped out at full. And the Sacrosanctum chest allows this, and I want you to look at the wording here. Damage taken recoup this life is also recoup this energy shield. So that means not only do you get your energy shield recoup, you also still get your life recoup, being able to sustain your Demon Form for free. So you get the best of both worlds. Now, these are the sources of recoup in general. You get up to 20% from your helmet. This is a suffix, elemental damage, take this. Energy shield already. You can get a corruption on your Sacrosanctum, and it has intrinsically life taken recoup. You also get speed of recoup from your boots right here, from this parkour. You also get up to 30% fire damage taken recoup this life. It is fire damage that you take. You get up to 30% from your flask. So get a 30% roll. It rolls pretty wide from 15 to 30. And you can press this every 8 seconds or so. Also look that you have some good duration on it. Then there's some clusters here. Loose flesh, right? You got over here, storm driven. You got glazed flesh. If you really need some more, you can also path down here to infused flesh, but this package as a whole is enough to sustain. Now, if you have maps that have less recovery, then it's a little bit worse. So for example, you can see here, players have 38% less recovery rate of life and energy shield. A lot of builds have different modifiers that are really a problem for their setup. This is the one for us. Then we also need to be ignite immune, because we are going to ignite ourselves with this fire damage. You can see my flammability build up, but then at 100%, nothing happens. What's going on there? Well, we're running the crystallized immunities right here, and we're immune to ignite if a majority of your socketed support gems are red, which we achieve. It's actually not completely necessary. I just put it in because I didn't use the sockets anyways. You can just put in whatever here. and then just put red supports on. It actually does work. Now, if it doesn't, you will notice pretty quickly because you'll see you will get ignited, so you have to play around with it a little bit. But just make sure that the amount of strength support gems here is higher than the amount of int support gems. Do note that if you have a different offhand than me with the Whispering Ice, and you have a, for example, quarterstaff attack, whatever, like martial weapon, those support gems do not count. But anything else that you cannot even run on your wand, for example, these are quarterstaff skills, they do work. And the third thing is you need life tap on your Comet. With how much damage we would take from the Comets that we're proccing, oh boy, it is over. You're literally going to off yourself, even with 10,000 recoup. So make sure that you have either Ataluis or normal life tap. They're both almost the same. Ataluis gives you like 5 to 10% more damage. But yeah, overall, that is a big deal. Before that, otherwise you're going to off yourself. Now let's talk about skills. I quickly want to show you why I really like Frostbolt as a proc. Now, with the Snake Pit unique ring, you can make it so that left ring slot projectiles from spells cannot chain, but they do fork. So that is quite strong. But the problem with Frostbolt is that it usually goes through enemies, right? And only at the end of its projectile. So for example, I throw it out there, it goes through mobs, and then somewhere behind there at a wall, it's going to explode. That's not what you want, because that explosion actually has a lot of damage. You can see right here, this is the projectile, and this is the explosion. Now, what if I told you can have both? Well, you can with the Snake Pit ring. Projectiles from spells cannot pierce. That means it will collide with the first enemy. So this is how that will look like. You go up to a pack, right? You go in demon form, go up to a pack, and it will explode, right? And then sometimes comets will rain down, but usually you don't even need to. Nice pack size. Boom. You can see right here, it just explodes immediately. And there you go. Recoup. Boom. And so yeah, that's what happens. And then you're just going to have a ton of projectiles fly out. Sometimes comets, obviously the most comets you're going to proc on bosses. But yeah, this is kind of how it will look like. Spark also has a ton of projectiles. Spark just hits a lot less hard, but it has its own advantages. So I'm not going to say this is like better. It's just, for me, it worked out a lot better, and a lot of people have tried it and really liked it. So that's all it is. It also lends itself very well. So if you think about levels, for example, you can get a +5 to cold spells, and that is overlaps with your Comet, so it's also quite synergistic that way. It also has more magnitude of chill, so everything around you is constantly chilled, constantly frozen. It is just an absolute pleasure to play. Everything explodes. I really prefer this skill just personally, if you can make room for that Snake Pit. You can also get new modifiers this patch. For example, I got the meta skills gain increased energy right here. You still need Sion's Temper. So Sion's Temper just means that on the first try, if I don't get my 8 additional projectiles around me, it will stack 1 wild shard, and that gives me a little bit extra percent chance next time. Now I have 2, now I have 3, and at some point I'm just going to proc it. That's all it means. It's incredibly, incredibly strong. I need to use Valentas because Frostbolt without Valentas is absolutely like dreadful, as you can see. You need that projectile speed, otherwise it's going to feel really bad. Magnified area. So here's another thing. We're using certain supports because they have a lot of cost multiplier, because we want to spend as much mana as possible. And this is something you should look at in general, is whenever you have mana on your gear, it's actually pretty bad. I have mana here, I have mana on my wand. This will mean less times of you proccing your self damage, which means less recovery. You also don't want to get too little, because otherwise you're going to destroy your energy shield a little bit too fast, because recoup needs a little bit of time. But for example, magnified area has 130 cost multiplier. Tool stillness, same thing. It's only okay, but it has a 120 cost multiplier. And then Ignite 3 just helps quite a bit with the cast on Ignite procs. Then we have Frostwall, and this one is ridiculous. So this is where most of my boss damage will come from, where I plop it down on top of a boss. Now, what will happen is this is going to be the boss. I put down 3 times Frostball, and then I will start shooting Frostbolts. Now, when you're fighting a boss, you want to stand a little bit nearer, because we are proccing a living bomb right here, which gives us fire infusions, which will then empower our comets. And if you stand too far away, the fire infusions drop on top of the boss, and you won't be able to collect them. Because while we are taking a little bit of collection radius right here, and we're getting a little bit more from our aura down here from Siphon Elements, that is still not enough. You need to stand somewhere in near 4 meters. Another reason why that is important is because of overwhelming presence. This makes it so your enemy elemental ailment threshold is lower, which is, by the way, how energy is calculated on cast on elemental ailment. And yeah, so for Frostbolt, real quickly, Fortress 2, Spell Cascade, Considered Casting, Magnified Area, Cooldown Recovery. So let's get into Cast on Elemental Ailment and how these skills work. And oh boy, these are confusing and there's a lot of misinformation out there. The first thing that you need to understand about both Cast on Ailment and Cast on Crit, in case you're playing a Cast on Crit character, is the damage of your proc skill matters. Now, the gem does not say so, but you can test this with, for example, a Thunderstorm, which always shocks with shocking currents or whatever it's called, and have it do almost no damage versus have it do a lot of damage. These things still matter. They get factored in. And at some point, it did say on the skill itself, and then they just took it away. They still do say it for the ignite part, right? They say right here, enemies you ignite with hits from skills modified by the percentage of enemies' elemental ailment threshold. But it is still relevant for all of these, right? Now, on the freeze one, I'm not 100% sure because freeze is static, but on the other ones, 100%. And for your crit, it also matters, and it does say so, right? So that is the most important thing. Now, why is that important? It's because Frostbolt hits very, very hard, right? The damage of this skill is around about 4 to 5 times as much as a single spark proc. And yes, in a good arena, right, where the sparks will always come back, that is fine, right, because it's going to hit multiple times. But it is really nice to have the upfront damage. That's all I'm going to say. So you have both the projectile damage and the AoE explosion overlapping for just a ton of damage. This matters. So for example, if you're a PoE1 player and you're used to cast on crit there, it doesn't matter how much damage you deal. It just matters that you crit, right? So you take any fast hitting skill, you crit as much as possible, you're going to get a lot of procs. That is not how it works in this game. And with Cast on Ailment, same thing. Now we're proccing both the freeze side of Cast on Elemental Ailment as well as the ignite side, like I said in the intro, with the Bringer of Flame. And that is quite strong. We get a little bit of flammability magnitude here. And then we also have Ignite 2 support on the Frostbolt. Sorry, Ignite 3. Do note that I'm not really investing into it much more because I don't think it's that important. But if you want to build into it more, you could also get a ton of flammability right here. Or maybe if you have a different setup and you can use your Anoint, also go Fulmination. The second thing is increased energy gained is usually overrated. So I'm talking about these nodes right here. Meta skills gain percentage increased energy. Now, they're not bad, right? Like they do something. As you can see right here, it works on an energy basis. You fill up your meter and then it procs. Fill up your meter, then it procs. However, since it does matter how much initial damage you do, this is not really better than just increasing your damage overall with, for example, I don't know, a just general damage node right here, 12% increased damage or whatever. And that is because, well, if you're doing more damage on your initial hit, you're also going to generate more energy, but also your Comet will do more damage. So you will proc more anyways, but also deal more damage. So it's just kind of like the numbers here are often not worth the hassle. Same goes for triggered spells deal increased damage though, by the way, because this only goes for the trigger after. It does not increase your Frostbolt damage, but if you increase your Frostbolt damage, you would gain extra procs as well, right? So it's kind of like a weird one here. And some of these are a little bit of a bait, right, might I say. Dynamism is still insane because it gives you 40% global damage, so that also counts for your Frostbolt, and it's just a very efficient node. So it's not like meta energy is bad. It's not a bad stat. It's just some of these nodes that only give you that are not that great. For example, Educational Practitioner also gives you global buffs, also extremely strong. Getting extra meta skill increased energy on Snake Pit, also incredibly strong. Just make sure that it does not remove a relevant mod. And at the end here, triggers cannot generate energy. Now, if you ever read these tooltips, you will know this anyways, right? It says right at the bottom here, I just want to make this clear because I've seen some videos where people talk about generating infinite energy with like Thunderstorm or currents and whatnot. Just so you know, if they do actually, it is a bug, and you will often see this in the hotfix list. So yes, there will always be oversights, but in general, test out if it actually works. As for support on our Cast on Elemental Ailments, we're proccing 2 skills, Living Bomb, which gives us our Fire Infusion, which will then empower the Comet. So if you look at Comet right here, Fire Infused, they buffed it this patch. It will now deal like triple damage if you have an infusion. So they're really honing in on that infusion generation, and that is how you do Living Bomb. And once again, you want to stand near the boss to actually collect them. While mapping, you're going to have more than enough because of Siphon Elements. 7% chance to spawn a Fire Remnant on igniting a non-ignited target. And once again, with the Infernalist, every single hit, like you will basically ignite every single enemy. You will just have Fire Infusions lying around everywhere. On bosses, like I said, position near the boss. Comet, Then we have efficiency and Octaluis Bloodletting or life tap. It's not that much of a difference, but all you need to know is that on bosses, your life will go down a lot. It will shoot down and then shoot up with the recoup and whatnot. That is normal. Don't forget, your energy shield is still there. It's still going to protect you, so don't freak out about that too much. But yeah, efficiency just means you can proc more comets on life and whatnot. So you can see right here, for example, that my comet currently without the efficiency would cost 528 life, and this way it only costs 317. So we're going to be able to proc almost double as many. If you don't have life tap in and you're dying, that's why you need life tap. And then we also have concentrated area while clearing. Your clear is totally fine. You don't really need that. You can, if you want to do like a clear setup, you can put in Spell Cascade if you really want to, but I find gem swapping annoying. Now then we have our offhand skills, which is Thunderstorm and Elemental Weakness. So on my offhand, I have a Whispering Ice, which applies elemental exposure with minus elemental resistances. I'll talk about this more on the passive tree, but I'm using both my Thunderstorm on weapon set 2 and my elemental weakness on weapon set 2. So I have kind of like a curse exposure thing going on there. Thunderstorm is there to 100% of the time shock with shock conduction. That's as much as it goes. Then I just put magnified area, prolonged duration. And then I also have overcharge and commiserate, which is a combo of support gems, which basically just gives me a better shock. Ellie weak, pretty straightforward. I have prolonged duration, magnified area, cursed ground, heightened curse, and ritualistic curse. It just gives me a huge thing I can plop down, right? So I put down my Thunderstorm, I put down this, and that's just kind of how it goes. After that, I have auras. The overwhelming presence right here is ridiculously strong. If you do not know, this cast on ailment works off of elemental ailment threshold, so it's easier to ignite somebody or freeze somebody if they have lower threshold, and that's exactly what overwhelming presence does. Do note that this is only in your presence, so once again, moving up to bosses is going to be quite strong, and yeah, if you're next to a rare, that will make it a lot easier, and you have freeze, so it's quite easy. If you're wondering about these weird red gems, once again, think back to when I talked about Ignite immunity. I'm just throwing them in to make sure that Crystallize immunities is active, and I am immune to Ignite because I have the most red support gems. You can play around with this whatever you want, but if you see goofy supports, that's probably why. Then we have Siphon Elements, which is our source of fire remnants for the extra meteors. It's just really nice. It also gives us extra collection of remnants, and that is it. These are just filler skills once again to make sure that our we have more strength support gems than int. Item wise, I am missing crit on both my wand and my focus, so my crit chance is extremely low right now, 27.96%, as you can see right here, which is not an issue because we're not cast on crit. Once again, for us, crit is only a more multiplier. It is a damage multiplier. So yeah, I could go to 40. Like I said, you can easily double or triple your damage. I'm not really sure why you would need to. If you have incredibly good gear on this build, just so you know, what I would do personally is remove some of this damage. Maybe, for example, remove all of these points right here, or maybe remove all of these points and just go ham on energy shield. Stack like 12k, 13k, just so you're basically immune to damage. Otherwise, +5 to cold spell skills, which, because Frostbolt and Comet overlap, you can actually go for a +5 instead of a +4, which is very nice. For the Spellslinger, I'm personally only using it for Orb of Storms with compressed duration over abundance. So what I do is I go up to a boss, right? I press E, and I put down 2 Orb of Storms, and they give me 2 Lightning Infusions for the Frostwall. And Frostwall does have a Lightning Infused version right here, as you can see, but that's all I'm really doing with it. If you're doing Numpad Trick, which as a streamer is a little bit annoying, you can do that and put another Meteor setup or another Living Bomb setup in there. Cast speed, elemental damage. Damage is extra, cold damage is the best one by far. Then we have our focus, where once again, +2 is the best thing you can get. Cast speed, as much cast speed as possible. Cast speed both, I mean, it just feels incredible, right? It fuels up your recoup faster. It gives you extra projectile speed because of how Valentas work. 75% of cast speed also gets converted to projectile speed. It is a huge stat, and then crit would obviously be another great stat. Same on the want. On your Sacrosanctum, make sure that you have enough spirit between your Sacrosanctum and your amulet. You want a total of plus 60 to spirit. A Recoup corruption goes a long way up top here. It let me cut this whole cluster down here, which was very nice. What the right amount of Recoup is really hard to say. It's over duration, just whatever feels comfortable to you. Otherwise, yeah, it's just a great chest, just as much ES as possible. On your amulet, you really want plus 3. You want that damage taken recoup this life as high as possible. I think you can go to like 25, 26. Life roll is decent. Otherwise, just spirit. Very important. On your rings, you want a snake pit. Make sure that it has both projectile, if you are corrupting it like I did here with the meta skills gain with a cultivation orb. Just make sure that it keeps the fork and it keeps spell damage and cast speed, and it keeps the projectiles cannot pierce. Everything else is whatever. Make sure that it's in your left ring as well. On the right ring, we just have a little bit of resistances and cast speed and life. That's about all it is. On your boots, now if you can get 2 augments, that's a big one, because you can get both 5% movement speed and 12% increased speed of recoup with the Esta Zunti Soul Core. Do note that if you only have 1 augment, you still want to keep the move speed, and you just put the Esta Zunti in the helmet, which gives you 8% recoup instead of the recoup speed. It is worse, but still good. On your belt, the life regen mod, completely forget about it. I just bought this bricked belt because it was very cheap. All you want is the percentage of fire damage taken recouped as life, then as much life as possible, and then as many resistances as possible. The fire damage recouped as life is super important because it gives up to 30%, which is huge. Then we have Sign Echo, which makes it so much more easier to freeze enemies. These gloves are basically best in slot. I would never cut them. They also give you a ton more damage when enemies are actually frozen. And then, as I said, the Life Flask, you want as much recoup as possible. These are pretty cheap. I think even the 30%er right now is quite cheap. If you want the 50% duration as well, that's going to cost you a little bit more. But just the 30%, as you can see right here, we're talking like 5 exalts. So that's pretty good. Mana Flask does not matter. Like I said, I just have this one because it's kind of cute. I don't have anything fancy here. The Fall of the Axe grants you Onslaught whenever you're slowed. Then you want Freeze immunity and you want Bleed immunity, which is quite important actually, because do note that Bleed goes through your ES. So if you don't have this, there can be some weird situations. I've not died to Bleed ever since I equipped this one. I will quickly finish the rest of this map just to show you. So whenever you get into a map, you will have a little bit of a ramp up time, and that is normal, just so you know. Let's put out these glorious sound effects a little bit so you can hear what's going on. Now, just down. So, yeah, you go in, you activate your demon form, right? And you're just going to dodge away, basically. This is how it's going to look like. You're going to dodge, you're going to dodge. You can, for the most part, be very rambunctious when it comes to that. Now, I will say that if your gear sucks, you have to play a little bit more careful than I do here. But with this amount of recoup, nothing can really touch you. Not in any sort of content like this anyways. Now, I'm just quickly going to head to the boss right here. So what you want to do is you want to... Oops. Did I do it correctly? Oh, here he is. Sorry. Put down the Thunderstorm, put down the LE Weak. It doesn't really matter. These normal bosses are not really an issue. I just threw down a few Frostballs in between. I know this was a little bit rougher. You can also look at in the intro how I did it. So basically, you do LE Weak, then you do Thunderstorm. You can also pre-throw a little bit to already get your recoup up, right? Thunderstorm, LE Weak, and then once the boss plops up, he has damage reduction for a little bit. You don't... If you have enough damage, it doesn't really matter. You can just start spamming, but usually I would wait like maybe 1 to 2 seconds before then plopping down your Frostballs. You kind of want to do it one after another, not really immediately, and then you just pop them with the Frostbolts. As for the passive tree, all of this will be in the max roll planner, but just so you know what's going on here, we're grabbing as much cast speed and increased spell damage as we possibly can. We're grabbing as much recoup as we can and as much energy shield as we can. Basically everywhere. There are a few refined setups. So the first one here is the Heroic Tragedy setup. So this is a timeless jewel. So all the notables in this radius get converted to new notables, as well as that all the keystones get converted to knightly tenets. Gain no inherent bonus from intelligence. What this does is it decreases our Infernal Flame. because int, as you know, it usually gives you mana, right? So you can see right here, +2 mana per 1 intelligence. This makes it so you don't get that anymore and you get evasion. We're not scaling evasion, it's just about reducing that mana because you can see right here, I have 1,200 Infernal Flame. The lower the better, because you're proccing your Recoup more. If I unspec this, I go back to 1,800, which is really bad. So it would take me a lot longer to hit full Infernal Flame and proc that self-damage. So that is what this is mostly for. But there is another thing you can do with it. And that is I'm using From Nothing. Passives in radius of Conduit can be allocated without being connected to a tree. Conduit is right here. Even though it is overwritten by Nightly Tenants, it does still work. So what you can do is you overlap 8 notables here in total, which you can just allocate for one single point. So for example, I can take a 1-pointer right here that gives me 40% yes and 10 lightning res, which is obviously ridiculous. So there's a notable here, but it doesn't really serve me well. There's a notable here. This one, 40% spell damage for a point. This one, 40% cold damage, 15 dex for a point. And then 40% increased max energy shield and 10 lightning res again. Now, do I know which ones are good for this build? No, you will have to buy a few and just try it out and then resell the next. That is what I did. It works splendidly. And then you just hover over the nodes and see what's good. Now you can actually see what is good. If you type in Heroic Tragedy and you go to Timeless Jewel passive, you scroll all the way down, the blue ones are the ones you need. So just so we're clear on this, you need the Olroth, Songworthy Deeds by the Line of Olroth. That is the one that gives you Nightly Tenants, and that's the blue ones right here. These are the only notables that can spawn, and it's a total of 12 only. 6 of them are good for you, so it's not that hard to find a good overlap right here. Cast speed, very strong. Pierce an enemy doesn't work. It's not a downside because you cannot pierce. So 10% cast speed for a point, very strong. This one is the one I have, very strong. This does nothing. Spell damage, very strong. Critical hit chance for spells and blind, very strong. I unfortunately don't have that one. Prod speed freeze buildup is okay. I would take it for a point. Max energy shield, lightning res. This is the best one by a mile. This one is completely ridiculous. And then there's also Oaken Form, which gives you extra recoup. So just mix and match. Whatever you get, you get. The more patient you are with getting these, the better results. I've seen people who have up to 6 notables right here because they've been cycling through them on trade. Other than that, the weapon setup, right? The weapon swap setup. You can see right here, the outline of red is my wand setup. That is weapon set 1, and then weapon set 2 is the green outlines. On the green outlines, I'm just getting extra curse magnitude for my elemental weakness, and I'm getting extra exposure effect for the thunderstorm, which that is the one that applies my exposure from the whispering ice. So that is really all I do. So you can see some nodes right here. Some nodes right here with Impending Doom. Do note that if you time your curse correctly and you put it down early enough, you even get a little bit extra magnitude, a little bit extra curse magnitude. Will it really matter? Depends on your gear. For me, I don't even feel a difference anymore. But yeah, that's about it. As for leveling, since this is not a beginner-friendly guide where you just start out with immediately, there's a lot of intricate mechanics. You do not want to start this unless you already have the currency to boot, right? So in that case, I would highly recommend a Twink leveling setup. I have a video from last league. Almost everything in that video is still up to date. I might make a new version, but it's currently holidays, so it's a little bit hard for me too. But almost everything in there is correct. Otherwise, there is a really good caster setup that I've seen on Reddit that I will also link down below in the description if you already want to level as a caster instead of quarterstaves. But all in all, my conclusion for the build is Demon Form is absolutely nuts. I dreaded the day where I would have to play casters again because of their movement speed and Blink being not what it used to be, right? I'm not going to farm up a Temporalis for 2,000 Divines, so yeah. Demon Form kind of alleviated that completely, and it just feels absolutely amazing to go through the map like this. So I will say that Demon Form, 30% more damage, 25 cast speed, makes you faster. It is ridiculous. Like, if anything, if there's any takeaway from this video, that should be the #1 thing, and it's usually quite easy to compensate for the degen. A lot of people think that you need to take Master Darkness for it to be good. For some reason, they think you need this infinite recovery, but they changed this a while ago and put the node of the normal Demon Form first, so you just have 10 stacks. That's all you have to recover from. And honestly, Infernalist as a whole is underrated as hell. This Ascendancy currently has 1% use rate on Pure Ninja, and I'm not really sure why. Because mana is kind of an issue. Now, sure, there's like more abuse cases where it's now, it can be easy to sustain mana if you have certain setups. Some of them are very expensive, but sure. But Pyromantic Pact just taking that away completely and even giving you an upside. Personally, I will tell you, I've played Spell Leech builds and I've played Recoup builds, and I absolutely love, and I mean love Recoup builds because they're also active out of combat. Now, is there a little bit of annoyance where at the start of the map you have to rip it up a little bit? Yes, but just the fact that there doesn't have to be an enemy nearby for your recovery to kick in can be so nice, especially if you're waiting for certain mechanics, waiting for certain bosses. It's incredible. The build's very fun to put together. Now, for some people, this build will be a nightmare to put together because of the self-damage and the recoup. You have to hit the right numbers, right? You have to know what you're doing. You have to put all the pieces together. You're probably not the kind of guy who actually watched this video, right? You maybe just fast forwarded to the conclusion. Then this build's probably not for you. This is a little bit finicky and is for people who are actually willing to put in the time. And then the most annoyed I was by the fact that I can't run Headhunter, and I couldn't figure out why. There was a list of rare mods. There was nothing there that would indicate it. Maybe there's like a hidden abyss mod that I don't know about. But what happened is my energy shield recoup was still working, but my life recoup wasn't. I still have no idea what's going on. Maybe it was an abyss issue, and if you don't run abyss, it's fine. You can try it out again if you want to. But I was just like, whatever. It's not that important for the build. Headhunter is mostly like, at this point, I don't know what content I can't run, so it didn't really feel necessary whatsoever. The fact that I can't run less recovery maps was a little bit more annoying because it means they have to be a little bit more picky, but it is what it is. Overall, though, I'm having an absolute blast with the build. No unforeseen bugs or anything like that. If you guys have followed my channel, you maybe saw the Ancestral Warrior stuff, which put me behind by hundreds of divines because I wasn't able to set up my temple when everything was going on, because I had to reroll again, and then there were holidays and whatnot. So yeah, not the best league for me, but I came back with this build. No like 2,000 divine chests needed whatsoever. Demon form still makes you fast. Absolute banger. And whatever like cost on crit, cost on ailment version you go with, whether you go with this version or any of the 7,000 other Comet builds, it is kind of a problem right now with casters. Like there's so little amount of skills that are actually usable, especially compared to some of the attack-based builds. But it is what it is. It is Comet meta, and yeah, here we are. Either way, though, I hope you guys are enjoying the league. I will be taking a few days off and do some IRL stuff and come back with probably a new build. I'll see if I have some more in me, and then there's also Torchlight Infinite in the middle of January, so we're gonna look into that. But either way, though, had a blast so far. With that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.